Hi, everyone. Welcome. I want to share with you today a new process that I've discovered called RIM. And I'm really honored because I'm interviewing the creator of RIM. Her name is Dr. Deb Sandella. And let me tell you a little bit about her. So, Dr. Deb has been a mental health professional for over 40 years as a psychotherapist and also in mental health facilities. She's written a couple of books on her process, Releasing the Inner Magician, which is great for kids, and Goodbye Hurt and Pain, which is an amazing book with exercises in it that you can use. The process that she uses, RIM, regenerating images in memory, has just shown incredibly fast results with things like healing trauma and getting rid of anxiety and depression. And there's been some really incredible research supporting that. And Dr. Deb, would you like to share a little bit more about that research?
Sure, I would love to. And so actually we have had research, for several years that's been happening. This research was actually conducted by the University of Colorado. And so we were very excited about that to work with Dr. Paul Cook, who was the principal investigator. And we just had such amazing results that I'm so excited about it. It's actually published already now in Frontiers in Psychology, which is a peer-reviewed journal. So you can read more about it there. There was significant reduction in anxiety and depression after one session, and that the quality of the experience created results that were very similar to psychedelic therapy, except without the psychedelic, which is a good thing.
And I think that brings me to why, as a coach, would someone be interested in this? Because it sounds very much like deep therapy. But I was really excited when I came across this work because I've been a coach for over 20 years and I've gotten great results with clients. But there was one thing that I noticed, which is even when clients were very, very clear on the things that were holding them back, they would often slip back into their old habits and they wouldn't quite get to the bottom of it. And so, one of the things that really excited me when I looked into this was how, after just one session or two sessions, you're actually making shifts inside. And it's a process a coach can learn to use. It's a really easy process. I did some investigation before I joined. I was concerned about boundaries, making sure that as a coach, I didn't cross into the realm of therapy. And the way it's set up, it really protects you from all of that.
Yes, that's really right, Nahid, that in fact, therapists have trouble learning it, because it's so different than therapy. It's
Mhm.
really non-clinical and organic. So it's very much a collaboration with our emotional operating system and the way that our neurology works.
Mhm.
Uh, but it's primarily just verbal, but it is client led, and because it's client led, there's some really magical things that happen, because when we are in control, we're not so scared, so that our resistance starts to fade away, and then our organic emotional operating system can kick in and really help resolve whatever is the root cause, whatever the block is. And in the beginning, we don't really know what the block is because it's down in the subconscious. So
Yeah.
that's what's amazing. And we all know about the subconscious, but how do you work with the subconscious, because it's nonverbal. It's
I
a
know.
nonverbal part.
And we talk a lot in coaching about, neuroscience, reprogramming the brain, uh, you know, but none of that really does get rid of all of the blocks. And I think one of the things for me, even, is I'm always on my own journey as well. And I want to get rid of all of the blocks. And I want to be able to help my clients get rid of all of the blocks. So I think I realized not too long ago that if I just stay up here with the cognitive stuff, we're not going to have success. We really have to bring the whole body into it, and we do have to access the subconscious, but how? And this is such a great tool because it allows you to do that in a safe way. And I am a classic case of, no, I don't want to do anything really woo-woo. I don't want to be in a place where I'm going to be super vulnerable or start crying. I tend to work in pretty professional environments, and a lot of my clients are the same way. Everything's up in the head. We don't do woo-woo stuff.
Oh, I totally understand. In fact, even as a therapist, I didn't want to do woo woo. I was very clear that I didn't do woo woo. So it was very interesting. But what happens, and actually, this was demonstrated in the research because people had EEGs done during sessions, during their RIM session, as part of the research. And what we found was the technique just, very gently and gradually and naturally starts to shift from the thinking mind into the feeling, sensing, intuitive mind. And when that happens, this is what I learned. So, really, this was the greatest discovery of all from all of this is that we are born with this capacity to self-heal, but it's not in ways that we already know. So there are the steps. RIM is really just a way to collaborate with our already ability to heal, and gives us predictability in with something that's not very easy to control or predict, which is emotion. you know.
Right. Well, and it's funny because emotion does run us, right? And I think we know that emotion runs us, but we're so used to everything layered on top of emotion, our thinking brain, and we don't know how to access it. And
Absolutely. Well, it's so inaccessible because it's stored in the body and it is nonverbal. So that the intuitive feeling, sensing part, neurological part of us is kind of unable to communicate until it collaborates with the thinking mind. So then the thinking mind comes in and can give it words and meaning. But what happens is when you start with the thinking mind first, the intuitive mind never gets to be heard because the thinking mind is, that's where our ego is. That's where we think it's superior, that part of us that is superior. So we've all noticed that in others and in ourselves, how, when we really get into overdrive thinking, that it starts to become really, what do you call it, judgmental. We start
Mhm.
making judgments. I mean, that's what its job to do, is to evaluate, analyze, to figure out what works and what doesn't work. However, when we're dealing with emotion, it's really a whole different game. And because that part of the brain neurologically does not know how to feel. So it is cold and calculating.
Mhm.
And
It's not
then
connected at all.
and then the intuitive, sensory, creative feeling part of the neurology just doesn't have words. So it can be, if it doesn't have a balance, then it can become a puddle on the floor. So you need both. Both sides need each other.
I love this idea of marrying both sides of the brain and really leveraging their synergy, let's say.
Yeah.
I know that coaches are going to say, oh, yeah, so you're doing somatic work. So maybe you can clarify how RIM is really beyond doing somatic work, or maybe what a typical coach might think about when they think of somatic work compared to what RIM is.
Yeah. So there is a part of REM that is what we call it body centered.
Hmm.
Because the language of REM is all very non-clinical. The process itself is dipsy do. So that, it was my attempt to really have a very doable, simple process that is not therapy. And
Hmm.
so, yet very helpful. And so, when you talk about what somatics is now, um, that's only a small piece of how REM works. So, initial body sensing is a part of the REM process. And also, we include spontaneous imagination, which makes they are huge partners, and it's really becomes quite magical what can happen when you allow your imagination, the spontaneous imagination. It's not visualizing, it's not attempting to see something specific like in guided imagery. It's really what your intuitive mind is bringing in spontaneously to represent an issue or give you an answer or help you with a decision. And what would you say? Because I know you've experienced this enough. So what's that been like for you to have these spontaneous images come in during your REM process?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as a client, I've experienced both this and guided imagery. Um, and there is a difference. So, and the thing that's the same about them is sometimes I'm just sitting there thinking I'm making stuff up. And I guess the first thing to say is that's fine, right?
Right.
Because I'm realizing, but guided imagery is different because they're asking you very specific questions. They're guiding you along. Whereas RIM does actually what we say we do as coaches in probably a more extreme way, which this is why I think it's so good for coaches, because we say we follow the client. But we really don't follow the client because we kind of have an agenda of making them better or something. But if you're doing RIM well, I feel like this is going to make me a better coach because it really teaches me to follow the client. So sometimes I'm sitting there in my client role and nothing comes up, or what comes up just seems so bizarre and weird, but we just go with it. We just
Right.
go with it. We just let it evolve. And it's almost like my imagination is talking to me in metaphors and giving me information that I will later understand.
I think of it as it's like doing an internal remodel,
Hmm.
moving blocks, physical blocks to moving forward, or little speed bumps, if you want to call them that, that are slowing down our success, but they're unknown. And as they become known, then we can smooth them out. Basically, they are reconstructed. There's a reconstruction going on there that smooths the way for our or natural system to kick into high its potential.
Right, right.
That's the main thing is it's not in the thinking process. We still can have words and meaning, but it's not a thinking process.
Right. And I've talked to other coaches. In fact, I have my own coach, and we've talked about things like food issues, for example. And he said, 90% of his clients, because he works strictly with people with food issues, the issue with food is not about food. It's about
Right.
something else. And so if you go into a RIM session and you say something like, well, I want to lose weight, or I want to eat better, or change my relationship with food, you're going to go on this imaginary journey, and it's not going to seem like it has anything to do with food yet. What changes after a week or so, if you're paying attention, is you notice, let's say, cravings aren't as strong.
Mm-hmm.
And you're able to take that minute to go, oh, do I really want this or not?
Right.
Whereas that conversation before wasn't possible.
Yeah, RIM is set up in the way that I like to talk about it is it's effortless change. So in intellectual models, you're intending to make a change, and then you have to use willpower to keep making the change. It's so like in cognitive behavioral therapy, you reframe how you're thinking about something, but then you have to keep doing that pretty
Hmm.
consciously. And so because we are actually regenerating emotional memory, which is in the unconscious, it's in stored in the body. It's like body memory.
Hmm.
Because we're regenerating that from that which was somehow limited or sabotaging to something that's empowering, then now the body has new body memory of confidence,
Hmm.
and that carries through. It's that simple. I mean, it's just amazing to me how it works. I get really blown away because the things that'll happen in a session is like, oh my God, I could never have thought to to try and create this or do this with this client, and they could never have either. So it's only that we are unleashing the organic resources within people and within ourselves that just naturally show up and very, I want to say serendipitously, it all falls together so purposefully. So the thing that I've learned over all my mental health experience, but primarily through REM, is that the subconscious or the unconscious is purposeful. So it brings things that are going to serve the intention, but it may look very, as you said, very nonlinear, very non-related, but it's all in service to that.
Right, right. So, your emotions are running the show or your unconscious is running the show. One of the things that we like to say a lot is you're never going to do anything that doesn't serve you. So when clients get caught up in self-sabotaging behavior and they're like, why do I have this inner rebel? That inner rebel is standing for something, but you might not know what it is. It's protecting you in some way. And RIM is one way where you can go in and talk to the rebel and find out what's going on
Right,
at some point,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, that's a beautiful example.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we can think of some examples to really make it real for people in terms of before and after, because, you know, as coaches, we champion change in our clients, and we can get frustrated because we can be working with the same client on being less aggressive or speaking up more or something, and they know it and they're practicing it and they make incremental improvements, but at some point we say, well, they can't change their personality. And so I have one example. I'm not going to name any names, but I have one example of somebody that I've witnessed that has done RIM. What I noticed about her is that over the course of her doing RIM, her voice got stronger. Her voice just used to, there were a lot of times she didn't speak up or she spoke up very tentatively. And then as she did some RIM work, she wasn't even noticing it herself, but being part of the same team she was on, she would just say what she thought, and she wouldn't ever say it in a way that was offensive or that would hurt somebody's feelings, but she articulated her feelings, and it was just so wonderful for the team to hear what she was thinking, what she was feeling, and she was adding so much value. And she didn't really realize it because it was just a change that was happening. But to me, outside of her, I was like, wow, that rim is really doing some great stuff.
Exactly.
And you don't always get to see that in your clients.
Oh, well, I mean, if, in terms of students who I end up basically seeing and working with over a few years,
Hmm.
they're really like different people.
Hmm.
Because all of a sudden, whatever was driving them that was not useful is gone. And so then they're getting to be themselves. And gosh, really all of us are quite wonderful when we're just being ourselves. One story is coming to mind that was really just again in I think it was two sessions she did, and it's in the book. In fact, it was a young woman. She was in her early 30s and she was very successful professionally, but she wanted to be successful having a partner, getting married, and having children, and that had never been a successful part of her life. She had not
Hmm.
dated a lot. And in her session, the moment that showed up that was the root cause, and it showed up spontaneously. She was a fifth grader standing in the fifth grade cafeteria line. And she said, I have no memory of this. I don't know why this is showing up. Well, then all of a sudden, as she's in the scene, in her imagination, one of the fifth grade boys walks up to her and says, "You're ugly." And well, in that moment, we've been fifth grade girls before.
Hmm.
And oh my God, we're so sensitive about how we look at that age. She just went into a real shame spiral. She was holding
Hmm.
back tears as she wanted to crawl under the table. And that's what, of course, what made it stick. That's why it was stuck in her unconscious. So, but now in this scene, now we have the redo ability. And so, we began to, I mean, I just facilitated her having a conversation with the boy. And so she said, "Well, you hurt my feelings. Why did you do that?" Well, just to be able to say that in the scene is
Hmm.
really amazing. In fact, it gives me goosebumps every time I say that part. And so that felt really freeing as well. So then what she heard from him now, but now that there's objectivity and she looked through his eyes, do you have a son, don't you?
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, I have a son too who's 40 now, but he was in fifth grade once upon a time. And do you have any thoughts about what he said?
Oh, I bet he had a crush on her.
He did. Of course, and so he said, yeah. He goes, well, I'm sorry. I said it because I like you. And in that moment, just hearing that from him, it was like her whole body memory rewired from I'm not attractive to boys to they like me.
Hmm.
And so within a few months, she's met a man that she really liked. Within a year, they got married. They have two kids now. I happen to know her mother, so I know I'm able to keep up with where she is.
Hmm.
And you could have talked about that for forever, but
Yeah.
could you have ever known it was that moment in time that stuck in her subconscious that had the message that was a very debilitating message stuck to it, and it wasn't even accurate. It wasn't
Right.
even accurate. And that's not uncommon for our memory to distort, our experience to be distorted. There's many times it is not accurate.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because I think that this is really important for people to understand about trauma that gets embedded in your body and keeps you stuck. And that is that it doesn't even have to be a big event.
No, no, it's not about the event. Trauma is not about the event, it's about the impact. And so for that little tiny untrue event, she had a gigantic impact because of her age, her vulnerability, the intensity of the feeling. What causes memories, emotional memories to stick is the intensity of the emotion, whether it's positive or negative. So we also remember, really intensely positive moments as well. And in fact, with Bessel van der Kolk, who is really an expert on trauma, his research showed that trauma registers in the nervous system as images.
Mm.
So it's in that nonverbal part of the brain, but the image is there. And it's close to the part where we experience fear, where fear originates, that part of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it's been so hard to understand how to treat trauma, is because of that. Because it's stuck in images and not words.
Yep, that makes so much sense. I remember you saying that the truth is not necessary for healing.
Right.
It's not about the true events. It's
No,
about kind of how you experience them physiologically
exactly.
in the moment and how that got stored in your memory.
That's right. That's right. Because I had a client who wanted me to testify related to somebody that he saw as a perpetrator, although he was an adult at the time. And I said, well, RIM. I mean, I'll be happy to, but this is what you need to know of what I would say is that RIM is not about determining truth. It is about whatever's needed for healing. And so the way we remember things doesn't mean that's actually the way they were. We
Mm-hmm.
know that about memory from memory research now. Ever since O.J. Simpson case, there's
Mm-hmm.
been so much research about memory, and we understand now its vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
we can alter and change the memory, and just as intensely think it's true.
Right. So I think, when it comes to coaching or any other profession where you're dealing with people who are stuck or they're dealing with kind of a high level of maybe anxiety or frustration, so there's this emotional stuff that makes it hard for them to be happy. I love the idea of being able to use this RIM process to heal that without necessarily having to be a certified trauma healer or anything like that. So
Right.
I think that's another thing. This is a kind of a simple and doable. I mean, it takes a lot of practice for sure, but but once you learn the pieces of it and you get comfortable with it, it's like riding a bike, I think.
Well, it's very organic. It's very natural. So we don't have any fancy things that we're doing. The primary thing we're doing is we're following the client
Hmm.
and mirroring the client. And that's harder than you think because we're just not used to doing it. We're
Right.
used as helpers, we're used to giving the client something. And in this way, though, we are giving them the greatest gift by just giving them our intense attention because as a client, and you probably have noticed this, when I've had my own sessions, it's like to be followed in that way without being questioned in any way. It's like you can't do it wrong. In RIM, we tell clients you can't do this wrong, so you just be yourself, and we're following you. And what happens with that kind of experience is just an amazing inner safety, emotional safety. Because in our world, how often do we have that kind of experience? Not often.
Well, exactly. And, that is actually why ICF teaches you to follow the client. But it is very hard to not get attached as a coach
Right,
to your client's outcome. And I even see it in RIM with my classmates, right? I want to have a good RIM session with them. So I want to make sure that they get a big breakthrough. Now I'm imposing an agenda that
right.
that they have to have a big breakthrough. So it takes a lot of confidence and comfort, I think, with the thing, but it lines up so well with ICF values and skills that I know that even if I didn't become a RIM facilitator, I would still become a better coach just having gone through this training. Of course, I'm
Absolutely.
going to be doing RIM facilitation because it's so effective. Um, and I guess one other thing that came to mind that I'll share is, kind of how it feels from the inside. So that's the thing. It's a seismic shift inside that you cannot talk yourself into. So I've been a pleaser. So if you've a lot of us coaches do positive intelligence, pleaser's my number one saboteur. So I've always put others first and just hyper attuned to people's needs and kind of jumped in and wanted to help. Well, in my RIM sessions, little by little, I'm getting messages about how that's not useful, but I'm
Yeah,
getting visceral messages. And
good.
my body feels like when I get done is the thing I used to feel like I would pick up on a distress signal and I would
Hmm.
feel this pulling. And I couldn't stop thinking about that distress signal until I had gone and fixed it somehow. Right. So this was all underneath stuff. It's not like I could tell myself, oh, don't listen to that distress signal over there. Right. Well, now as I've sort of gone through the process and really, really kind of integrated that my pleasing behavior really isn't helping anybody,
Yeah,
two things are happening. Number one is when I hear a distress signal, I more acknowledge it with compassion, but I also completely trust that the person is going to be fine, and if they need something, they'll come ask for it. So I'm able to let it go. I'm able
yeah,
to continue to be myself and stay on my journey while they do it, and that's my body allowing it because my body relaxes and my body allows my brain to refocus. The second thing that's happened is it's so much easier for me to have conversations with people because they're not so draining. Because
yes,
as someone who's always trying to help and fix, there's so much baggage involved in every relationship. Well, now I can have a great connection with somebody and I
yeah,
can leave and there's isn't a lingering anything.
yeah.
So I'm having better and closer relationships with less unhealthy attachment, let's just say.
Yes, that's beautiful. I'm so glad you shared that. And I'm so glad that you're having that experience.
In just what, 3 months? So
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes. I think that is one of the things, like when I was doing psychotherapy back years and years ago, I was very, it's like I didn't like messing around. I didn't like any babysitting. And so it was like, let's do this. What can we do fast? I liked the breakthrough kind of stuff. And that I learned that the most breakthrough stuff was when it went straight to the unconscious,
Hmm.
because that's where the culprit actually is. That's where the issue actually is. And we can talk around it and on it for forever, but that means we're just going to have to use willpower and willpower, 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 and which I wasn't a great fan of.
No, it's draining and
It's so draining. It does. It takes so much energy. And then our spontaneity gets compressed.
hmm.
So then it starts feeling like, well, I can't be myself. I have to be something else. Can't be myself. So RIM is so conducive to the authentic, spontaneous self, more than anything I've ever experienced. And I have to say, I mean, I have over 40 years of experience in this field, both in personal experiences as well as a therapist or facilitator. So the feeling to be able to really authentically be yourself and be really just comfortable with that, to trust that, is just immense, especially in these times. The statistics, the Gallup poll shows that we are the most stressed people in the world right now, the United States. American citizens are. So it's a time when whatever's there is getting, whatever our core issues are, they're getting triggered
hmm.
to a higher level. But in REM, what we know is that means they've floated to the top more. That means they're just easier and quicker to process.
Right. So kind of an opportunity in the challenge of so many people feeling stressed and lonely.
Exactly. It's a great opportunity. And so I think in the REM Institute, we feel like, oh yeah, this is such a great opportunity. And there are people that are in discomfort, that it's almost like, yes, we got to do this. Let's get this done. So,
Yeah, excellent. And so I would just say for anyone who's watching this, if it's not June 19th yet, and you are anywhere near Irvine, California, if you are a coach or a therapist or anyone who works with people and wants to just help them heal or be more confident or just be able to be themselves and be their best selves. I think this is such an excellent process to learn. And you don't have to be a therapist or be a coach or be anything else. You just have to go through the training. And I'm going through the training now. I'm so glad I made the decision. It's really, really worth all the effort that I'm putting in from my perspective. Dr. Deb, is there anything else that you can think of that people should know that might make them want to come? Well, I'm just going to add this. Dr. Deb doesn't live in California. She lives in Colorado. So this is a very rare opportunity to get to see her in California. But what else that should people know about
well,
coming?
yeah, even if it's just you're interested in more of your own self learning,
Hmm.
because I will be doing a group room experience that everybody will be able to participate in if they want to. And so you'll get to have an experience. And so it's like you'll have a takeaway. You'll have more, more than one takeaway, really. I mean, because some of the information itself is a takeaway, and the self experience is a very personal takeaway.
Yeah, and I can attest because I've been part of group rims that even if it's a 10-minute rim, I will usually get something big out of it. And it'll have my mind going with insights and ahas. So I think that I'm glad that you brought that up and definitely come if you want to just have a taste of what that experience is.
Hmm.
Excellent. And then if it's after June 19th and you missed it and you were just watching this as a recording, I would recommend that you go to the RIM Institute and take a look at what they have to offer because there's a lot of, 2-day classes or 1-day classes even that people can get a taste of.
Right. Yes, yes. So you can go to the website at riminstitute.com, And like you said, there's several different offerings. 1 day, 2 day. There's a 6 week virtual personal growth experience, and it's all creative. It's not anything that's same old, same old. It all is unique in its creativity and in its felt experience, so that it can feel very, very personal, very gratifying.
Yeah. And, I know at least me and my fellow coaches, most of us are on personal growth journeys as well. So I know they will be just excited to meet you and probably excited to take one of those courses and have a taste of it. All right. So thank you all for watching. Learn more. Either go to the RIM Institute or come visit us at ICF and come talk to coaches that have done this process and get a tool in your toolbox that will make a huge difference in your client's life.